Hello. I think I'm live. Just going to test my settings. Sort of like, okay, looks like volume is working. Ah, got someone in the chat already. Hello, RW. Thanks for that feedback. I don't think I've seen you here before. Maybe you're a new person. Okay, I need to post the link to the chat. Join the Zoom call. Click this link. All right. Zoom link is now in the chat, and I have pinned it so we don't lose track of it. All right, I've just muted my YouTube feed so I don't get an echo. All right, so it's getting smoother every time. I'm always remembering new technical things to fix or try out. Like one thing I want to try out this time is to figure out how to remove someone from a Zoom call. I had a little trouble with that last time, in case I need to do that. Okay, here's got another comment from RW. First time watching one of your live shows. I enjoy your debates, conversations with others. I'm an objectivist myself. Okay. Well, welcome to the live stream. This is a relatively new thing for me. This is live stream number 8, March 26th, 2025. I just started this earlier this month, and each one is an experiment. I might try to put an ad out on Facebook and X to get some more people over. Maybe I'll do that now. Yeah, I guess if I had a, um, yeah, let me do that. Okay. So feel free to type in the chat. And once I finish the announcement on Facebook, I will come back and read any new chat messages. Okay. This is one thing I would have done before the stream started if I were a little more smooth at this, but this is still fairly early going. Um, okay. All right, now I just need to update the link. Get my new thumbnail. Okay, that looks good. Post. I'm doing this sooner than I did last time. I think I waited much later in the live stream last time before I put out my ads on Facebook and X, but I know at least some people have come over from seeing my Facebook and X ads. So maybe putting them out earlier will help get even more people. Okay. Okay. All right. Both links are up, Facebook and X. All right, I'm going to come back to the chat, see if there's... Okay, doesn't look like there's any new messages yet. So RW, I wonder how long ago you first started watching my content. See, you've got an American flag as your avatar. Maybe that means you're pro-American. I'm pro-American. Okay. It's got some other, I did another post separately on Facebook today about, I just asked a question. I said, does Russia deserve to be nuked? And I also put that on X, and that generated some engagement. I've been reading a lot recently about Ukraine and Russia. As I mentioned in my last live stream, I've been reading through the Ukrainian presidents in order, and I just finished today the fifth president, Petro Poroshenko. He was the president before Zelensky from 2014 to 2019. And he came to the presidency during the, or I guess right after the previous president fled the country. Yanukovych, he fled the country. Um, he more pro-Russia, the previous president, Yanushchenko. Sorry, Yanukovych. I get him mixed up with the one before him, who was, I think, Yanushchenko or Yushchenko. That's well, actually, there was an acting president for a few months between Yanukovych and um, Poroshenko. The acting president was Alexander Turchinov. I'm just looking at the Wikipedia page right now. Viktor Yushchenko. Okay, that was the one before Yanukovych. It's confusing because their names are both Victor and their last initial is Y. So it took me a while to get them straight. Viktor Yushchenko and then Viktor Yanukovych were two successive presidents. Yushchenko was poisoned, but he survived it. Oh, okay. Got a couple more comments here from RW. Said maybe 6 months or so ago. Okay. Moral support only for Ukraine. What are your thoughts on that? Asks RW. What are my thoughts on that? Well, I guess if when you say only, do you mean as opposed to and also Russia? I mean, I support Ukraine in this conflict, which has been going on since, well, 2014 is when Russia invaded Crimea, and that started the war. So it's been going on for over 10 years now. And of course, there was a big increase in the scale of it in 2022 when Russia did an invasion. I guess before that, they were supporting pro separatist or groups in the Ukraine, and maybe there were some. I think there were might have also been Russians involved, but not nearly on the scale as they were starting in 2022. Oh, okay. So you clarify what you meant. RW says, sorry, I mean opposed to the US funding the war. Oh, okay. So do I think um, Ukraine should get moral support, but not financial support? Um, Let me just pop out this chat. So put it where I want to on the screen so I don't get distracted by my own video. And let me move my Zoom window here. Okay, now, okay, so now I can focus on the question better. Should they only get, well, I think they should not get any money funded by coercion. So, well, I mean, I don't think, I guess if you know my view and Ayn Rand's view, coercion is bad. So there should be no taxes. People shouldn't be forced to fund anything. Now, I guess you could try to set aside that issue and say, well, given that there are coercively derived funds, how should it be used? Would it be better to provide funding for Ukraine or funding for Russia? Well, I guess if you set it up like that, I would say, well, definitely Ukraine, because I think they're on the right side in this war. They're not the aggressors. Um, but I guess a harder question would be like, okay, well, what about between Ukraine and Israel? Like, how should um, if you had to choose between those? I haven't thought about that question before. Um, we're funding both, um, so I guess uh, I'm I'm hesitant to endorse we should give funding to Ukraine, given that it's based on coercion. Like, if people want to give money voluntarily, I think they should be able to, they should give as much as they want, just like any voluntary cause. Like, if you want to support some charity, um, you should be free to do so or not. It shouldn't be coerced by the government. But I do think we could be doing a much better job than we are supporting Ukraine morally. Like, I don't think it seems like uh, Trump is more friendly to Putin and I guess in general dictators. He maybe because he aspires to be one himself, um, than he is towards someone like Zelensky, um, who I think uh, has something of a moral compass that Trump lacks. Um, so I guess uh, we like this meeting in the Oval Office that happened a few weeks ago, I think shows that we're not giving Ukraine the kind of moral support um, it deserves. Um, so I guess I don't know all the latest details. Like, are we considering giving more funding to Ukraine at this time? I don't know. Um, but it seems like we're not giving it the moral support it deserves. Um, but now I'm thinking like if we were giving it moral support, would that be enough? I guess I don't I don't feel comfortable right now advocating for financial support. Which is not to say it's wrong, given that we're doing coercion on so many other we're so supporting so many other things by coercion. Um, I certainly wouldn't put Ukraine first on the chopping block. So I think it would be far down the list. There's many other things that should be cut before that, like I guess foreign aid to other countries that are, I don't know if we're giving foreign aid to hostile countries. If we are, we should certainly stop that much before we stop aid to Ukraine or foreign aid to neutral countries, like who are neutral as between Russia and Ukraine. I guess if there are countries like that who draw moral equivalence or make no moral distinction between Russia and Ukraine, maybe we should stop funding those countries before Ukraine. Um, RW adds another comment. It's terrible how Trump and Vance treated Zelensky and Ukraine. Yeah, that was my sense as well. I watched that 50 minutes or so meeting in the Oval Office, um, and they were saying it was disrespectful for Zelensky to conduct himself or say what he said. Um, Said he hadn't said thank you or something like that. I don't know if that's true. I mean, I don't trust much that uh, Trump says, and I don't think he's a trustworthy person. Um, uh, okay, so let me. I've got a link in the. If anyone wants to jump on the call, there's a link pinned in the Zoom chat. I was thinking maybe another thing I could do is I could talk about some of the chats that came in the last live stream because I didn't have a chance to get to all of them. In the last live stream, it was kind of slow on the chat for the first, I don't know, 20, 25 minutes. There's actually more chat going on now compared to last time at this point in the live stream because uh, RW has been coming in with some comments right from the start, whereas last time it took like 20 or 25 minutes, I think. Um, So that's good. I'm glad to see some earlier chats here. But at a certain point in the last live stream, I got two phone calls, or not phone calls, but like Zoom calls. And then while I was on those calls, I couldn't look at the chat at the same time. So the chat started to pick up, and there were a lot more messages, and I couldn't keep up with it all. But it's all saved. If you can go back and watch the live chat replay. Um, and it's all there. And I was thinking maybe I could, if there's no new chats here, I could go back to the last live stream and kind of interact with the old chat, catch up with that if there's not new chats going on live. Um, so maybe I'll do that. But let's see, do I have anything more to say in reply to RW? RW. I'm trying to learn more about current events in general, but in particular recently, I've been reading more about Ukraine and Russia. Um, but there's so much I would like to learn, but it's uh, it's not always obvious how to best spend my time. Like, what should I learn about first so that I can comment in an informed way about it? I was just reading yesterday some about the nuclear arms situation in Ukraine because that was actually what led to this Facebook post on X. I mentioned that I asked this question: um, Does Russia deserve to be nuked? Um, so at first I was I was thinking, well, should I ask it differently? Like, should Ukraine nuke Russia? But then I was thinking, well, I recently learned that Ukraine doesn't have nukes because they signed this treaty. Um, don't remember exactly what year it was, but there was this non-proliferation treaty that Ukraine signed. I think this might have been 1994, sometime around there. Shortly after the fall of the Soviet Union, there was an agreement signed between Russia, Ukraine, the US, and the UK. I think they were also signatories. And it was agreed that Russia would not, sorry, Ukraine would not have nuclear weapons anymore. They had some, I guess, the Soviet Union had stationed some nuclear weapons in Ukraine, but after the fall of the Soviet Union, those nuclear weapons were withdrawn or somehow gotten rid of. But I guess Ukraine agreed to have its nuclear weapons withdrawn on certain conditions, such as that its borders are respected and it's not going to be invaded. But now that that's happened, um, it seems like, well, maybe that does that agreement now go out the window? Um, should it be able to acquire nuclear weapons now, or at least be admitted to something like NATO, um, so it can be allies with countries that do have nuclear weapons, so that it can um, have a stronger position against Russia? Seems plausible. Okay, so okay, I don't see any new people are coming and going. I can see that the number of viewers is going up and down, hovering around th two and three, sometimes four. So maybe what I will do is, since there aren't any new comments coming in, and since no one wants to join the call, maybe I'll go back to the previous live streams chat and see if there's any comments there that I want to reply to. Okay. I think I'll be on at least until 6:30. So that would be an hour because I started at 5:30 Pacific time. So yeah, I think I'll be on at least until 6:30, and maybe if there aren't any callers or chats that engage me longer than that, I'll just sign off because the point here is to engage with people. Okay, so let me go find the chat from the last time. Just a minute. Also, if there's any topics you want me to talk about, I don't know if I'll have anything to say, but feel free to at least suggest topics in the chat. I guess RW has already done that to an extent. Okay, where's my... Okay, I think I found the last chat. Okay, now I just need to find out where the last one is that I responded to. Had a long chat with someone, well, I don't know how long it was, but someone came on here, the second caller, and he was criticizing Alex Epstein. I was thinking maybe I should reply to that if I, um, I'm refreshing my memory on what was discussed in the last live stream by reading through some of these through the chat log. Okay. Yeah, I see where they're starting to talk about Alex. Got a call from friend Harper. He was the first call last time, who I sometimes hear on the Euron Brook show, sending super chats in. I hear his questions. Friend Harper says, I like Alex's idea of the knowledge system he describes in that book. I think he's talking about Alex Epstein's book, Fossil Future, which I have not read, although I have it. I just haven't gotten to it yet. I don't know when I will, if I will, because I have such a long reading list. Let me pull up some notes I made. Oh yeah, meritocracy. That was another thing thought I might say a little more on. And tariffs. Yeah, these are some other topics that came up in the last live stream. Maybe I'll say something about those. Okay, let me just go back to the chat, see if there's anything new that came in. Oh, Mark has joined. Hi, Mark. Oh, okay. RW says he has to drop off. Thanks for responding to my chats. Have a great night. You too. Thanks for coming by. Appreciate the engagement. Mark says, howdy, Dan. How's tonight's stream? What's been discussed so far? Uh, well, hello. It's just a few people so far, but it took longer than this last time, I think, for it to pick up and get a steady stream of chatters. So maybe it's actually more engaging, more engagement in the last one at this point. So far, I've talked a little about Ukraine and Russia. You can get a little flavor of that from the previous chats in the chat log. Um, I won't try to repeat it all. So for anyone who's listening to the live stream later, it's not too redundant. But yeah, mostly just talked a little about Russia and Ukraine, nuclear weapons. And I thought what I might do now is go to the chat from the previous live stream and address some of the ones that I did not get to last time. Since I was busy on a couple calls last time, I didn't have time to engage with the chat during those calls. So now until I'll give priority to new chats that come in today. But if there aren't new chats or if no one wants to call in, then I think what I'll do is just reply to some of the things last time that came up that I didn't have a chance to get to. So that's what I was just looking at the chat from last time um, and some notes I made about it. Hold on a second. Let me, okay. Yeah, so let me go back to my notes. So the topic of meritocracy came up last time. And there was one point I wanted to make about that, um, which I didn't think to make before, which is that if it if that means like rule by people who have merits, I don't think that's right. It's not like if you have merits, um, you deserve to rule over others. Like I was contrasting a merit-based system where you judge people by whether they have skills relevant to some job. Like if they're going to be a manager, you should look at their record as a manager. How good are they at managing people? Not as something like race or gender. Um, so a meritocracy might be, you might think of it as a system where you judge people by their relevant merits rather than things that are not relevant to a job. But when you have the suffix of that term, "crassy," that means rule over, I believe. So just because someone is good at something or has merits doesn't mean they should rule over others. So if we're talking a political system, um, I think there's probably something off about thinking of a good system as a meritocracy. Like I think it's fine to judge people by merits, but that doesn't mean they have right to coerce others just because they have more merit in some respect. Um, People should respect others' rights, which means not coercing them. Um, so, do I favor a meritocracy? Well, what exactly does that mean? If that means people with merit um, get to tell other people what to do, well, um, no, not if that means like politically they get to push them around and force them to do things. But um, if it just means judging people by their merits, then yeah, I think that's good, as opposed to judging by something non-essential or irrelevant like skin color or sex. So that was just an additional point I wanted to make about meritocracy. And I think there's been a podcast um, by the Ayn Rand Institute on this topic. In general, I think they put out good work, so I recommend listening to that if you want to look into this topic more of meritocracy. Okay, let's see. Tariffs, I talked about a little last time, and I think I just wasn't entirely clear about it. And let me just make one more stab at it. I was trying to make the point that tariffs are not good, even as retaliatory tariffs. And I think I didn't, or there was something about my explanation that I think was not quite right. Um, so if some other country like China passes a tariff against the US, then that means Americans now have to pay more for Chinese goods. Am I saying that right? Tariff. Well, I guess so. Which way is the tariff going? It- um, so if China passes a tariff against the U.S. and says you have to, this is the danger of doing live shows. If it's a pre-recorded show, then I have time to think about this and get it smooth. I don't have to try to do that on the fly. Maybe I should give this topic more time before I try to discuss it because I don't think I can. I don't think I'm ready yet to give a good explanation of what I was trying to do. So let me hold off on that. Um, See if any other. Okay, I see Mark has sent in a new comment. Um, he asks, any particular Ukraine-Russia related news? Wanted to ask about question on the philosophy of David Hume in contrast to both objectivism and Kant. Okay. So, so regarding Ukraine and Russia, I would I was mostly been reading about not the latest breaking news about them, but just I was just reading about the Ukraine-Russia war yesterday, like the entire thing going back to 2014 when Russia first invaded Crimea. Um, and I read through the entire article, which brings the war up to the present day. Um, and then today I was reading about the fifth president of Ukraine, Petro Poroshenko, who was the president before Zelensky. Um, so it was just kind of backstory about the Ukraine-Russia conflict. It wasn't late breaking news that I was discussing. By the way, I was thinking recently that so I said Ukraine or Crimea was invaded by Russia, but I think Russia would put a different spin on that and say, it always belonged to Russia or something. But um, um, I think Putin or in Russia will try to portray things in a different way. Um, like they'll say it's there is no country such as Ukraine. I've even heard some or read some statements to that effect. It's just a certain territory within Russia. So I guess maybe that's just Russian propaganda, but um, so you got to be careful sometimes. Don't necessarily take at face value the way something is described, but based on what I think are uh, reliable sources, I think saying that Russia invaded Ukraine is a good description. Could I defend that against someone who's much more knowledgeable than I am about this? Maybe not, but um, I'm not trying to be a world expert on this. Um, but I think it's a reasonable place for me to start at least to think that Russia invaded Crimea. I'm not going to trust Putin's spin on it. Okay. So Mark, you also say you wanted to ask about a question on the philosophy of David Hume in contrast to both objectivism and Kant. Okay. Well, go ahead and ask if you like. There's I guess there's a lot one could say. There's many issues in that ballpark. I don't know if you're still here. Maybe not. It only says one person right now in the chat, which could be me. Um, but I guess when and if you come back, feel free to elaborate on your question, and I'll do what I can to answer. Okay, so let's see. Anything else from last time? I had some thoughts on Alex Epstein, that whole discussion. Uh, so this person who was criticizing Alex, he was from the Caribbean, and he said it was getting really hotter there than it used to be in the last few years, I think. And now people are getting skin cancer, moles on their skin, and he claims that this is some topic Alex was going to address in or said it early on in his book that he was going to address, but then he didn't address it. I don't know if that's true, but that's what this caller was claiming. Um, but I was wondering if this caller is against fossil fuels entirely or scaling them back. Uh, I don't know. I didn't. That was something I just wondered about afterwards because I was getting the sense he was against fossil fuels and maybe in favor of nuclear instead. He was talking about nuclear some during that call. Um, but I guess the problem with nuclear now is it's so regulated, at least in the US. Uh, so it's too expensive. Um, so maybe if that were a financially reasonable option, it would be better to use better to use nuclear than fossil fuels. But given the current regulatory environment and the cost of it, um, I don't know if it seems like maybe fossil fuels is the best way. I'm not sure what he would say to that, but maybe I'll take his call if he wants to come back. He said, I don't know if he's going to come back, but um, one thing I'll figure out by doing these is when is a good time. Like I was thinking to live stream, I was thinking after work hours. So I didn't start till 5:30 Pacific. So I guess I'm competing with all the other after work hour YouTube live streams right now. See if there's any other notes I made from last time. I don't see any here, so let me go to the chat log. Friend Harper asked him, can the Caribbean have nuclear power and AC? Yeah, I guess if it's too hot for this guy who called in the Caribbean, how about just using AC? I think that was a question. But then I think he was saying, well, maybe the general environment, it doesn't really, it's still a problem if once you go outside, it's too hot. Um, I think that might have been part of his response to that. But I made the point that Alex makes that heat deaths are lower than cold deaths. So maybe global warming is actually good. This guy said that the world was not heating up uniformly. I don't I don't think Alex would deny that. I think I can recall him saying that certain regions heat up more than others. Um, Also, I don't think Alex denies that uh, global warming is at least partly man-made. I think I've heard him say that. So I guess the only place where this guy who called in and Alex, um, well, maybe not the only place they differ, but one place they differ is how serious global warming is. Like, is it a catastrophic threat or is it a minor issue? This guy seemed to, I don't know if he would say catastrophic, but certainly he thinks it's more serious than Alex thinks it is. Um, I think on Alex's view, global warming is manageable if people are allowed to use things like fossil fuels to power things like air conditioners. And um, fossil fuels give us climate mastery, and that's one of the benefits that needs to be taken into account, as opposed to just the drawbacks of fossil fuels. Okay, looking at some more chats from last time. Frederick Sebastian Olson was participating. I'm reading some of his right now. this guy who called in to talk about energy issues, he said he's pro-human flourishing. So I was trying to get a sense of his philosophic viewpoint, and I don't know if he'd say he's an objectivist, but at least um, he said he's pro-human flourishing, or something like that. So he doesn't have an anti-human perspective. At least that was the claim. He says, I'm reading one of his chats. I don't give a flying fudge about animals or the environment, and I am approaching this issue from a pro-human perspective, unquote. This guy who called in, he went by the name Latent Prion. That was his name in the chat, but on the call, it was Lee something, Lee Gangjin, Gangjin. That looks kind of Chinese to me. I don't know if he's Chinese, but he said he was living in the Caribbean. Although I don't know where he is now. Maybe he used to live there. I'm not sure. Getting towards the end of the chat, I think, from last time. I've got three people. A couple people have joined. I'm just reading. If you're just joining now, I'm just reading through the chat from last time to see if there's anything I want to comment on that I didn't have a chance to comment on last time, because there aren't any new chats coming in right now during today's live stream. So I thought I would just go back to the last one to catch up, but I'll give priority to any new ones that come in now. Or if anyone wants to join the Zoom call, I've put the link in the chat. So that is an option. He was saying something about tipping points. He thought it was a problem that Alex did not discuss tipping points in his book. I'm not sure what that means. Um, maybe I'll Google that in a minute if I don't have any other comments to reply to. Oh, Mark Thomas just added in the chat. He's distinctly Caribbean. I don't know whether it's Caribbean or Caribbean. Maybe it's both. Um, he's distinctly Caribbean, so likely both handles were jokes. Oh, because his voice sounded Caribbean. So his screen names in the chat and on Zoom were both jokes. Is that the idea? Because well, the screen name in the chat was latent prion. Yeah, I don't know what that is. Isn't that some kind of subatomic particle, a prion? Oh, Frederick Sebastian Olsen is back. Hello. Um, unlike Mark says, unlike me being Mark Thomas, what it says on the 10 winding up the show soon. I don't know how long the show is going to be. I guess it depends on you all. I said I would be here till 6:30 at least, so another 9 minutes. But I'll stay on longer if there's engagement in the chat or if someone wants to call in. But if I'm here for till 6:30 Pacific, then that's an hour. So I'll commit to at least that, and then longer depending on what kind of engagement I get here. Um, Mark says I have a meeting to catch soon, but I'll join briefly. That'll you be up to next? I think there's a typo there, but okay, yeah, feel free to pop in and pop out. I don't know if I'll still be here after you come back, but um, guess you'll find out. Frederick says, yeah, a bit late. I don't know what time you are on. Um, still got some daylight here where I am on Pacific time. Maybe you're on the East Coast or actually the guy who called in, was it? No, not last time. No, it wasn't a caller. There was someone from Belgium in the chat last time. Avenging Lettuce, I think that was his name. Or I'm not sure if that was the last stream or maybe it was some prior live stream, but he said he was from Belgium. And it was 1 a.m. his time. Okay. Go back to, oh, Matt T has entered the waiting room. I think that's a new person because I don't recognize that. I love to call in, but it's 2:23 in the morning. Oh, okay. I guess you're in Europe. That's 8 hours ahead. Okay. Maybe you can, I don't know, go outside or go in a car or something if you're not gonna, so you don't wake people up with your voice. All right. I see someone has entered the waiting room, Matt T. So let me admit that person. All right. I just hit admit. Hello, Matt. Looks like you are muted. And oh, do I have to ask you to unmute or can you unmute yourself? I guess I'll give you 10 more seconds if you don't. Oh, Mark T says
Howdy,
nope.
these working now?
Okay, now I hear you.
Yeah, this is Echo. Howdy, Dan. Hope your Wednesday's been off to a good start. For me, I think I'll have a little less time than I hope to join, but I did want to kind of clarify a lot because I on my question on I think it was um, Rand versus Hume versus Kant, and for me, I think you may have gotten that in the chat, but I want to um, find out what your thoughts on that were and like how to kind of see um, like either those two, the two former philosophers compared to Rand with regards to their positions that knowledge that reality can't be gleaned objectively versus yeah, my apologies.
No problem. Yeah, I did see your question, and I don't know if you were there when I got to it, but I just said
That wasn't.
if you want to specify more specifically what your question was about their views, then I could reply, and you just did. So maybe I can say a little on that now. So their views on uh, our ability to grasp reality, something along those lines. Um, by the way, I was confused. I thought you were a new person, but I recognized your name after you called in before, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, yeah. So I guess I think the name showed up differently than I remembered it. But anyways, so I guess you're the Mark T from the chat. So Rand versus Hume versus Kant on knowing reality. Well, I guess one thought that comes to my mind now is for Rand, you can actually you can know reality. For Kant, you can't. There's you're cut off from reality. You're stuck in the phenomenal realm, as he called it, as opposed to the noumenal realm. So he had this idea that there's this noumenal realm or reality, which um, we don't have access to because um, to have access to it, our means of knowing the world would have to have no identity. But because we have um, senses, our five senses, and we've got not only our senses, so our senses have a certain nature, whereas, other species have different kinds of senses, like bats. They they use echolocation to figure out where they are. Um, Humans have a different kind of sensory apparatus, and every species, and even within a species, you have some humans might differ from other humans. Some are colorblind, some are totally blind. Everyone has a different sensory apparatus, so um, no one perceives reality as it really is, only as it seems to them or as it appears to them. That's Kant's view. You can't perceive true reality, only reality as it appears to you, given your particular sense modalities. And he makes a similar point about the conceptual level. Um, we have certain categories that we use to think about the world. So when I say the conceptual level, I mean the level beyond what the lower animals, you could call them, have. So dogs and cats and fish and birds, right? They have a perceptual capacity. They can see and hear things and taste things, but they don't have the conceptual capacity. They can't think in terms of concepts, or certainly not nearly to the extent that humans can. But Kant says even on the conceptual level, the distinctively human type of cognition or consciousness, that too is um, cut off from reality because uh, it's only the human mode of perception. It doesn't, or of cognition. It doesn't allow us to grasp reality as it really is in itself. Rather, it only allows us to grasp reality as it is processed through the human mode of cognition. And there are certain categories like um, causality, existence. I think these are um, categories in the Kantian system, what he calls categories. Like these are kind of filters that our thoughts are structured by. Um, so we can't know true reality, only reality as it is, as it's been processed by our distinct mode of cognition. Uh, Rand thinks this is all wrong. Our means of knowledge, our means are means of knowledge. So they actually give us knowledge of the world. They're not obstacles to knowing the world. Um, she has this line in, I think it's For the New Intellectual, saying that on Kant's view, it amounts to the view that we're blind because we have eyes, like because we have a certain mode of cognition, we can't know reality or have contact with it. But that's just wrong on her view. Identity, the identity of a means of knowledge does not disqualify it as a means of knowledge. Um, I guess there's an implicit assumption on Kant's view that to be a means of knowledge, uh, your your means of knowledge has to have no identity. It can't be anything in particular. It has to be neither human nor bat nor alligator. It can't be anything in particular, but there's just no basis for that view. There's no reason to
Yeah,
think
and
that.
it's something essentially real,
Oh,
not to cut in, but essentially unreal. It's something that without those senses, what we wouldn't be able to create, make deductions on reality at all. Like because we rely on our senses, we rely on the ability to interpret them via cognition. And I do wonder if there might have been some kind of influence of like either theism or antitheism, like Kant's inspirations to like towards those beliefs, because before there's various different Christian beliefs that like a god being like the or a god being the source of the morality, and in kind of trying to thesis that it seems that it may have been throwing the baby out with the bathwater, or rather come to such nonsensical, unreal um, conclusions on on categories from other also similarly nonsensical um, beliefs from previous philosophy.
so
So
was
Kant's essentially
there,
bad to worse, essentially.
so the issue of his motivation, like what was there kind of some kind of religious or theist motivation? I think there was. He There's this famous line from, I think it's the preface of the Critique of Pure Reason, maybe the B edition of it. There was a edition and a B edition. I think the A edition came out in 1781, and I think the B edition was 1787. And I think in the preface to the B edition, he says, I have found it necessary to deny reason in order to make room for faith. Um, or I think in some translations, I found it necessary to deny knowledge in order to make room for faith. So that certainly
Quite
sounds like
telling.
like what?
Quite telling.
Quite, yeah. Yeah, it sounds like this is someone who he's comes from a religious background. I think he was, I don't know what kind of oh, pietist. I think that might be the sect of Christianity that he was raised with. Um, Maybe that's some kind of Protestant sect. Um,
It is, was, probably doesn't exist anymore. Maybe some, there are probably some like because I think from was something related to like Lutheranism of some sort, like kind of German, like kind of Puritan light Lutheranism. Although that
mhm.
my memory, but do continue that.
Yeah, that would make sense because he was from Königsberg, which is in Prussia, I think, which I guess eventually became part of the German Empire. Um, so yeah, I guess he was part of the Lutheran tradition, and but he was living in the Enlightenment. So this is during the period of Western history when respect for reason was maybe at its apex. So this is uh, Newton was one of the premier figures of the Enlightenment. He in the 17th century, and he discovered all these amazing things. And the Enlightenment and the development of science continued into the 18th century, the 1700s, which is when Kant was writing. He lived 1724 to 1804, and you could think of him as a rebel against the Enlightenment. He and Rousseau. I think Rousseau was trying to emphasize the role of feeling um, over as opposed to reason. And Kant, I think he's sometimes called, I think many people see him as a symbol of the Enlightenment, but I think he's better seen as an enemy of the Enlightenment. But he kind of gives a veneer of rationality. He has this. You might think of his system as just a complex set of rationalizations. There's not really any. It's not really rational in the end, um, but it has this kind of veneer of rationality. He's not like someone like Tertullian, one of the early fathers of the church, who he has this famous line, "Creo qui absurdum." I believe it because it's absurd. That's just out and out irrationalism, right? Kant wasn't like that. He kind of put a put a mask on what you might think of his irrationality. He has these arguments, and they which maybe you had to do in the Enlightenment to appear respectable. You can't just come out and say, "I believe it because it's absurd." You have to dress it up with some kind of argument. But given that statement from the preface, um, it seems like maybe he was just in the end trying to rationalize the place for faith. Um, so
Intentionally or not.
yeah, um, kind of doubt it could be accidental. I haven't said anything about Hume yet. You had also mentioned Hume, who was he came before Kant. Actually, Kant says that Hume woke him up from his dogmatic slumber. It's a famous line. Um, Let me just take a quick look at the chat to see if anything. Oh, Frederick just says that he's in Stockholm. Okay, Sweden. Okay, cool. It's interesting to get people from other parts of the world coming. I've never been to Stockholm. I've been to Sweden, um, but not that part of it. I'd like to go there someday. Um, let's see. What can I say about Hume? So, I think Hume was a skeptic in the end. He denied that there was a thing such as the self, for instance. Um, he had what you could call the bundle view of the self, where just a collection of impressions, um, sense perceptions. There are no entities. I think that was also one of his views. Um, Things like objects in the world, right? Like a rock. It's just a bundle of sensations, and there's nothing that's necessarily holding it together. It could split apart or turn into a pumpkin or a snake at any instant, and there's no reason to think it won't. There's no good reason to think it won't, and it's just by habit or custom that we think that the world is composed of these stable, enduring entities. There's really no rational basis for it. Um, but he says that he has to leave this philosophy behind when he exits his philosophical study, because I guess you can't live this way thinking that the world is actually like that. Maybe you'll just go insane. Um, but he thought, yeah, so the world is shattered. You could think of it like that. There's no stable, enduring entities. It's more like this Heraclitean flux that alludes to an ancient Greek philosopher um, who thought the world was full of contradictions and everything is constantly in changing. That's the one thing that doesn't change, that the fact that there is change. Um, and I think Hume had now there might be the illusion of permanence, but it's just an illusion. There's no reality to it. So Hume destroyed entities, destroyed the self, destroyed causality, destroyed um, induction. He's famous for the problem of induction, generalizing from particular cases to general principles. And so Kant was following this onslaught of skeptical positions, and he tried to put the world back together, basically. I think that's one way you could think of what Hume did. And um, I guess one of his ways of doing this was to come up with this idea of categories. The mind has these categories that structure the world for us. So um, it's necessarily the case that we experience the world in terms of as a world of entities that um, are engaged in causal relations with each other. Um, uh, the world can't fly apart for us because our minds are structured such that it can't fly apart. So I think in broad brushstrokes, you could think of Kant as like an answer to Hume, a way of solving the skepticism of Hume, or at least coming to terms with it. I guess um, it was described, I think, in Leonard Peikoff's History of Philosophy course. This is a student of Ayn Rand, her top student for decades. He gave a course on the history of philosophy, an excellent course, which is available for free. And I think in that course, he describes Kant's position as complacent skepticism. So it doesn't necessarily deny that true reality is is chaotic as and acausal as Hume Hume's philosophy would lead one to believe. But um, we we don't have to worry about encountering that reality because that's all post processing, um, or with the processing in place, giving these innate categories we have for the spatial, for the sensory world, there's space and time. I think those are the two sensory categories. And then on the conceptual level, there's 12 categories he comes up with. I think existence, substance, causation are examples. Um, since we only experience reality through those filters, it's necessarily the case that for us, our experience of the world is fixed in causal entities. Um, it's not going to fly apart at any moment. Um, uh, there's much more to say, but I don't know that I can go into it right now. It's been a while since I've read or thought about, studied Hume and Kant. Back in grad school, I did, but I've been out for several years. So I've given you like my off the top of the head memory of some of the key points of their views. Um, and maybe that's well, I just remembered another aspect of Hume's view, but which it might be good to mention now, which is his nominalism. So he's a nominalist about concepts. There's a certain theory about these. We have these abstract terms like there's individual human beings like you, me, Socrates, Aristotle, Ayn Rand, George Bush. Um, but what do they all have in common? What is it? What's the essential characteristic of a man or a human being? Um, is there anything? I mean, we all have different heights, different weights, different skin colors, different types of hair. Is there anything in common? Or do we just arbitrarily group these things together and call them all humans as opposed to dogs or chairs? Um, Now, I think Hume's view is that there's really nothing. It's just a name. That's why it's called nominalism. There's really nothing in common to these things except the name. There's nothing substantial in common between them. Um, I don't know if
Which
it's
now even modern science has disproven that we know just DNA, evolutionary biology. We know there's a lot in common between people on the genetic level.
yeah, we have a similar kind of DNA, but I don't know if that would persuade Hume. He might just focus in on the difference and say, well, there's you've got your DNA and I've got my DNA, and they're not exactly the same. And now I'm not saying he has a good argument, but I think he would try to argue that uh, there's not really anything that requires or necessitates that we group like you and me and Socrates, all those things I named together under the concept man or human being, even if you try to point out something like DNA, because then he would just appeal to the differences between our DNAs and say, well, your DNA is only, you know, 0.5% different than the DNA of a chimpanzee, or maybe it's even less than that difference. I don't know. So, um, do you really want to go down that road, or is that going to require us to put chimps in the same category as humans? But in any case, this is another way of him just kind of tearing apart uh, our worldview that we have these concepts in terms of which we think of the world or interact with the world, and he casts doubts on the validity of our concepts or the words we use to conceptualize the world. Um, so that certainly undermines human knowledge if the concepts in terms of which we think are invalid, if they're just arbitrary groupings that aren't really based on reality, then undermines our ability to know the world. So Hume, like Kant, has a way of undermining the idea that humans have knowledge of the world, but it's a different sort of way. Um, uh, so, anyways, I just wanted to. I was thinking back to your original question about Hume versus Kant versus objectivism on being able to know the world, and this is another aspect of that differentiates Hume and from objectivism, certainly. Like for on Ayn Rand's view, the objectivist view, concepts are valid tools of knowledge, but she has a different theory of concepts. It's not a nominalist view, it's an objectivist view. She wrote a whole book on her theory of concepts called Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology, which you might know about and maybe you've read it, but maybe other people out there um, don't know about that book. But if you want to see her theory of concepts, then I recommend that book. Many people don't know about that book. They they know about Ayn Rand as a novelist, but they're not aware of that she had philosophical views, including views about the nature of concepts, or the problem of universals. That's what it's been called historically. Um, Universals being another term for these for abstractions, like the term man or human being, which encapsulates these particular human beings, you, me, Socrates, Aristotle, Ayn Rand, etc. Those are particulars, but the problem of universals is to say, well, what is it that unites all these things, that justifies our using one term to refer to all of them, despite their particular differences? So uh, check that book out if you want to hear more, or you can ask me more about it, and maybe I can say more about it. See, we got another comment in the chat. Mark says there are a few objectivists in Sweden. Frederick says, yeah, but the Norwegians are better quantitatively and numerically. Oh, uh, do you mean qualitatively and numerically? Because I'm not sure what the difference is there between quantitatively and numerically. I've been to Norway as well, actually on the same trip that I went to Sweden, went to Oslo. Actually, there's a video on my YouTube channel, which was made in Scandinavia when I visited there. I had a chat with a couple Scandinavians. Um, yes, Frederick says, yeah, he meant, yeah, my bad. I guess he meant qualitatively and quantitatively. I don't know why they're better, at least qualitatively. I guess there's more of them, so I can understand that part. Yeah, I think I have heard about more. There's more of a Norwegian crowd of objectivists than in Sweden, but not sure why they would be. Yeah, Frederick says he meant qualitatively. Yeah, we're up to 4 people. I'm wondering how the chat, I wanted it to appear with gallery view, but it looks like on my screen, it's in the speaker view. So the gallery view is when both people on the call appear side by side.
Well, that's
Um,
actually fine for me. I'm actually going to be heading out in a um but I do want to thank you for the opportunity to elucidate more of my question. When I may, when are you doing your next stream? For me, I might uh be interested in coming back, and like for me, I think I said in the chat there's a particularization I'd want to advocate on behalf of. I'd also want to um, get in touch or get you in touch with someone who had wanted you on one of their shows, and so I'll we'll we can still keep in touch, kind of see if we could set that up. Yeah, right now we're in spring. Um, almost at summer, and the world is falling apart, but there's still, or so it seems, but there's still much to hope for. There's still more people learning about objectivism and learning about other pro-liberty um, ideologies, and hopefully that will continue into the future. I know very soon there will be going to be quite a few conferences in the summer, I believe. Um, Ocon's always been on, except for last year, on the East Coast, but uh, it's happening this July. I know. I think Atlas and Craig Bill's organization also having their own some events, and there are also myriad other events. So I mean, there's in fact there a few events in Europe not too long ago. So I mean, there's stuff's going on, but um, there is more ground to be had in this regard. And with you, with regards that you are kind of workplace as well, I'd just like to kind of and say thanks, so to speak,
yeah,
to you.
thanks for Thanks for coming on. It's a little bit choppy, your audio. I don't know if that's because my connection is not great, but I think I got the
No more
gist.
mine.
Okay. I heard you ask about my next live stream. I think I will likely do one this weekend, so maybe Saturday or Sunday. That's what I think I will do for my next live stream. I'm not sure exactly what time, um, but yeah, I think probably Saturday or Sunday I'll do another live stream. And then you mentioned there was someone you were trying to connect me with, or I am interested in that. So, sorry I didn't reply to you sent me a DM the other day, but feel free to just send me the contact info, or I don't know how you want to go about it, but if you want to somehow
Yeah,
put
we
me
can
in
do that.
touch with whoever that is, yeah, feel free to send me their contact info or however you want to do it.
Will do. Well, thank you for the opportunity to stop by, Dan. Hope you have a good rest of your night.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for coming by. Bye bye. All right. So there goes Mark from the chat. And let's see if there's anyone else in the waiting room. I don't think so right now. Frederick says in the chat, in terms of positive life orientation, politics, and integration of mind body. Okay, I'm not sure what that's referring to. Uh, Maybe he's talking about the good qualities of objectivism. I think that would apply. It has a life orientation and is sees mind and body as integrated, not opposed to each other, as Plato might say. All right, it is now 6:57 Pacific time. So I guess I'll stay on for at least another 3 minutes. Get to the oh, uh, that's your quality assessment, says Frederick. That I was asking before what he meant by quality when he said they're Norwegians are better qualitatively. Um, so he means the Norwegians have a more positive life orientation, better politics, and better integration of mind and body. Okay. Can't vouch for that myself, but you're living over there, so I guess you're better positioned. I mean, the Scandinavian countries, they've often scored well on what's called the happiness report, which I don't really put much stock in. Yaron Brook did a show recently about that, where what they mean by happiness is something more like they have low standards. So people who take this happiness survey, they're asked this question about like, given what you think is possible in life, how would you rate where you are on a scale of like 1 to 10? And because they have low expectations of what is possible, they rate themselves as very high, um, relative to people in other countries like the US. I guess people in the US have a higher view of what is possible. And as a result, they say where they are right now on that scale is lower. They still have room to grow. And then they end up uh, scoring lower on this happiness uh, test. But I don't think that's really a good way to assess happiness. But for more discussion of that, you can hear Yaron's recent show. I'm not sure what day that was, but Frederick comes in with another. Oh, it's an average of the people he met, that on average they're more positive. Okay. Yeah, I don't. Um, They have a lot of, I've debated many people who I think are, um, they like the Nordic model in terms of politics. Like it's this, um, there's a heavy role for governments, at least in certain respects. In some respects, I think it's actually, there's less of a role for government. Like it's less regulated. The taxes are higher than in the US, but the regulations are less. Um, there's a course that was given on Scandinavia by Carl Svanberg some years ago at an objectivist conference. I think you might be able to find that on, I don't know if it's on the Ayn Rand Institute's website, but it talks about this, the history of Sweden and when and to what extent it has been pro freedom, pro capitalism, and it's I guess a lot of people on the left like to point to the Scandinavian model as um, evidence that socialism works. But are these countries really socialist? Well, in some ways, maybe not as much as the U.S. is. And that's why they're able to do as well as they do. Um, but uh, for more details, see that course. Um, or Euron Brook has also done some shows on it. Also, Norway has this sovereign wealth fund because of oil. They that they have off their coast. It's kind of an unusual sort of case. Um, Frederick says some objectivist Swedes are doing great with Rand's philosophy, but the average is lowered because of a number of bad apples. Okay. Uh, okay. Not sure who you have in mind, or but that's all right. Don't need to don't need to call them out. And then you say the bad apples here are Trump apologists because of his anti-establishment stance. Okay, so they're Swedish bad apples because they're Trump apologists. All right, I guess I would agree. Yeah, I would agree that that makes someone a bad apple. I don't think being pro-Trump or a Trump apologist is consistent with objectivism. I can, at least a certain point, I could understand voting for Trump, um, but being an apologist for Trump or actually liking the guy, I think I don't see how you can do that and also be pro-objectivism. Maybe I should talk more about that on another show. But I mean, just something like January 6th, his disregard for the rule of law, it's quite bad. Or again, check out the Yaron Brook show. Yaron Brook show. He's very anti-Trump, and he talks a lot about that. Um, so if you want more of the reasoning, that's a good source, I think. All right. It's past 7 now. So I think I'm going to wrap up unless anyone jumps into the call right now. I'll give 1 minute in case anyone wants to um, jump onto Zoom. I don't think it would be a long call. Um, but okay, yeah, till 45 seconds. Then I'm going to wrap up the show. And I think, as I mentioned before, I'll do another live stream on the weekend. Uh, so hopefully I'll see some of you there. And if you want to like or subscribe, I'd appreciate that. If you liked it or want to help the channel grow, all that engagement helps. Like, subscribe, comment, share. So, oh, here's one more comment that came in from Frederick. He says, exactly. Voting for Trump pre-2025 is understandable. and I find there are good arguments, but being infected with the Trump zombie syndrome is my red line. Yeah, that's a term Yaron Brook has started using, Trump zombie syndrome. I guess that's the counter to the so-called Trump derangement syndrome. Just an irrational support of Trump would be the opposite. So I guess Trump TDS would be irrational anti-Trump status, uh, and then TZS, Trump zombie syndrome, would be irrational pro-Trump mindset. Uh, okay, yeah. So the vote for the presidential election was 2024, November of 2024. So maybe that's what you mean. He took office in January of 2025. And you say, yeah, voting for Trump before 2025 or before the last election is understandable. Um, yeah, I haven't voted for him in any election, but I can, I think I can see how people might see him as the lesser of evils, at least in the 2016 election. I don't know about the 2024 election, but in any case, I don't think you can be pro-Trump and have the right view of him. I think that's pretty clearly wrong. Okay, I am going to end this stream. So thanks again for coming by, and hopefully I will see you in a future stream. All right. Good night, everyone.